I worked as a, sorry, I just heard a strange, I'm recording this and I didn't realize it. But yeah, I worked as a newspaper journalist right out of school for a few years. I've worked in communications and the publications and entertainment for the National Basketball Association. And then I went back to school and got a master's degree. And when I finished that, I got back into news with NBC News, and I've been working for NBC News for, I just passed my 19-year anniversary in August. So, so yeah, I've had a long career. I've done several different things. Times have changed significantly in all this time that I've been doing these things. So I've seen a lot of changes, and I think the way you're learning it is probably different from the way I'm learning, the way I learned things when I was there. But there's still some, you know, I've picked up some things along the way, and hopefully I'm able to answer some of your questions and share some of my experiences as best as possible, and see if there's anything that I can share with you that would be useful to you.
All right, Kristi is really on a tight timeline because she's got some deadlines coming up. So usually we would do student questions at the end, but we want to make sure that you guys get a chance to ask her your questions while she is still available. So we're just going to go ahead and open it right up first and foremost to student questions. So you can either raise your hand and I'll take a look and see if I see that and call on you, or if you want to type it in the chat, that's fine too. We'll go ahead and start with Roy.
Hi, Kristi. My name is Roy. I'm a broadcast journalism major. So when you graduated and you got to your first market, what was the most challenging thing for you?
Roy, hi. Thanks for coming and listening to me. Well, my first market was actually many years later, because I started off in newspapers, but when I started off in TV, I was older than most people. Because I was doing something else for several years. And I also kind of took a short track, which sounds like it's a good thing, but in some ways it was not. So I started at market 26 with no experience on TV at all. And so what ended up happening was the dynamics of the newsroom and personalities. I did not learn a lot of the politics of the business. Because, you know, most people work their way up through tiny markets and keep going up. And I kind of jumped in at 26. And then I was only at that market for 11 months. And then I came here to Dallas, Fort Worth. So what I got was a lot of people who did not want me there. So, and I had to deal with a lot of personalities. These are things that I don't think would happen now. But at that time, I struggled with a lot of the politics of the newsroom. So there was just that personal dynamic, but also I hadn't learned how to write quickly for TV, how to put stories together quickly for TV. So those were some of the things that I wish I'd known before I started. You know, I quickly learned those things, and that's the bottom line for all of this stuff. None of it is so difficult that it can't be learned quickly if you're interested in doing it and you want to do it. But those are some of the things that I had to pick up fast and kind of hit the ground running, and writing quickly, doing the interviews and putting together a good story that looks good for TV in a very short amount of time. You know, we were driving across, my first job was in Connecticut. So we were driving across the entire state every day. There's only one market there. And to get stories and to put them together quickly for the, you know, I don't remember, 5, 6, and 11 o'clock news cast or whatever. So I'm not sure, did I get off track? Am I answering your question?
Yes.
Okay. So those are some things I had to learn quickly when I got in, because, you know, we can talk about all the things about learning just the job itself, but there's also the personal side. There are some dynamics in any office, but in these newsrooms, there's a lot of personal dynamics that can come into play as well.
All right, any other student questions? Just either raise your hand or type it in the chat. Gabriella?
Hi, I'm Gabriella, broadcast and digital journalism major. I guess going towards what you were going off of the atmosphere of the newsroom, and how those kind of, I guess my question is, how would you describe the atmosphere of a newsroom and the kind of station you're in right now?
You know, again, I've been at NBC for 19 years, so a lot has changed.
Right.
And we also are owned by Comcast, which is a huge corporation. So our workplace is governed by a larger body. And this is hard. I don't want to get into the weeds here, but in other things have improved a lot because we work for a major corporation that diverse and I think it's very different from when we were just independent newsrooms and people are kind of, we didn't have the same set of rules. But I will say there are dynamics of the newsroom, and personalities come into play. Everybody's a little stressed out all the time on some level. You know, depending on what time of day it is, Joe over here might be more stressed out than this person over here because Joe has a deadline. His show starts at 5. Marcy's show starts at 6. Bob and Karen are working on the 10. So everybody has a different level of just what they're working on and what they're dealing with on any given day. And then there are people who are, you know, the managing editors, executive producers who are overseeing everything all day. So there's a lot on with personalities, with just getting things done, getting things on. It's always sort of a fast-paced day. And again, it just depends on who's doing what at what time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other student questions? Erica?
Okay, hi, I'm Erica. I'm a sports broadcasting major. So my question would be, was it pretty easy? Like, did it come pretty easy to you just be like broadcasting and just like be able to talk and read teleprompter and stuff like that?
Well, I don't think it's easy. I mean, my first job, I made so many mistakes. I mean, I think it was easy in the sense that I knew that I could do it. And I think that's the bottom line. You want to do it, and you think if you have, you think you can do it, you probably can. You know, there was a learning curve for sure. It was not easy. I made lots of mistakes on the air. I mean, there was one live cold open that I did in Connecticut where I completely froze up. I just could not remember. I was so sleepy. It was for the early morning show and I'd barely slept. And I could not remember what I was supposed to say. And I kept thinking they were going to take the camera off me, and they didn't. They just kept me up. So, you know, I've had some horrible, horrible experiences, but, you know, I got better, and I was able to stay employed and move up relatively quickly. So, I mean, I think many people, you know, if you're going to be able to realistically, and I shouldn't say this, not everyone does, but at some point, you know if you have what it takes to do it. And I think if you know that, it's just a matter of overcoming whatever doubts you have and getting the practice in and, you know, picking yourself up and dusting yourself off and just continuing to go at it, which is what I did. I made lots of mistakes, and not to mention it was just very hard the first couple of years. Again, like I mentioned, the personal dynamics, I was dealing with outside forces. So, you know, it was not easy, but at the same time, I knew that it was something that I was going to be good at. And so I just kept at it.
Thank you.
So I have a question from Danielle Zachariah. She sent it to me in the chat. She says, what would you say is the best way to engage viewers in news stories?
Oh, that's a complex question. Well, I will tell you that we do focus groups. They do focus groups all the time. I'm not sure about right now, but just trying to answer that question. Constantly, they're doing focus groups, and they ask them questions about us. What do you think of Kristi Nelson? What do you think of, you know, Bianca Castro, or whatever? And because I've had people tell me what they were asked at some of these focus groups. You know, it's kind of like with products at a company. They may have focus groups come in and tell them which macaroni and cheese tastes best or whatever. They do the same thing with us. And they also tell us what they like and what they don't like. So I don't know. That's a difficult question for me because I think it's changing all the time. And this year is very different from last year and the years before. We thought that you had to have perfect video and sound to do newscasts because no one would watch it otherwise. Well, we've proven that's not actually true this year because we have reporters doing newscasts from iPhone 11s in their living rooms and kitchens. They're doing entire newscasts. And I'm doing, I have the stories that I'm working on today were all done with Zoom interviews and, I didn't get 2 or 3 sources and, I just got whoever I could get. And so what we're learning is that people are forgiving and when it comes to things like this video and the presentation itself. But the bottom line is though, we have to be trustworthy. We have to be truthful. We have to be accurate. And I think with the personalities, meaning the journalists, and we're all journalists here. We're not just news readers. Most of us have degrees in journalism or master's degrees in journalism. So a lot of us are really committed to the profession. But you have to be accurate. You have to tell the stories in engaging ways. We don't always do that. But to engage the viewer, the story itself has to be engaging. Sometimes when we're working on deadlines or if we are busy and we don't have time to read everything, we can let some of those things, we let it slide and that happens. But I think the best way to engage viewers is for us to be engaging. And that comes through the storytelling and just also sometimes the personalities or often the personalities, but also just being accurate. If people know that if we go to you, that you're going to tell the truth and you're going to explain it as simply as possible, they'll keep coming back. And that's what we try to do. We're just trying not to muddy the waters and just tell you what we know.
I have a question from Asia. They want to know, what tips do you have for those who are going to be graduating soon, heading into their first jobs?
I was thinking about this morning, this exact question. And it's hard for me because it was so long ago that I graduated. But, this year and next year are going to be difficult. Not necessarily for journalists. I mean, I don't know. We've had a lot of layoffs and we've had salary cuts. So with those things, that's I don't know what it's going to look like next year, but the bottom line is you're all watching the news every day. You're reading the newspapers, whether it be online, which is how most of us read them these days. Obviously, this job that we've chosen is important and it still has value. I think there were a few years where there was some talk about, it's all going away or it's not going to be the same and everybody's clearing out their newsroom, which has definitely happened and newspapers have been hit very hard. But I think that this particular career will always have value. I see it as kind of like nurses. You're always going to need nurses. You're always going to need journalists to some degree. What it's going to look like, I don't know. So I would say when you graduate, you have to be positive and commit and just be, I guess, the only word I can think of is aware of your commitment to it. And I think the people who are truly the most committed to it will find what they are looking for. And you have to be flexible. Maybe what you set out to do is not necessarily the thing that you will end up doing. I started out as a newspaper reporter. Boy, am I glad that I switched. A lot of my friends lost their jobs 10, 12 years ago, and have never come back. You have to be flexible, kind of willing to pivot, but there's lots of opportunities out there. We've got vast digital divisions and, there's just so many different things you can do if you're open to it. And I'd also say be open to moving. I'm surprised at how many people just refuse to go anywhere differently. They want to be, I get wanting to be with your family and being close to your family. I am now, my family's in Dallas. But when you're first starting out, I used to always be shocked that people weren't willing to move to a new location to try something different, try a new place and learn a new city and become a reporter in a new city. It's actually, that part is really fun. Going to a place you don't know where anything is and you don't know anyone, and just getting and meeting people on the ground. And that's a lot of fun. So, you know, it doesn't have to be that extreme, but I would just say be flexible in what you are looking for and what your outcomes are going to be. Because you kind of have to pivot if the industry needs you to pivot. And sometimes pivoting is best for you financially, or your peace of mind. You know, I've spoken to people recently because I'm on an online Facebook group for journalists. It's called "What's Your Plan B?" And maybe associated with my grad school, I'm not sure, but at any rate, there are people on there who refuse to leave their weekly newspaper in the Midwest, even though they can't pay their rent and they have no money saved for retirement. And oh, I just love being a journalist and I'm a newspaper man or whatever. They say things like that. And I'm sort of like, okay, but you can't support yourself. So what are you holding on to? You know, try something different. And so, you know, to a certain extent, you have to be able to be realistic about it, and you have to change and pivot to fit your life. You know, if you want to be broke and living like this guy, and he and I were exchanging messages back and forth, and for, you know, well into your 30s, I guess you can do that if you want to, if it works for you. But at one hand, he was complaining about that, but on the other hand, he was unwilling to try something different. So, and I sent him all these job listings I just found online. Like, look at this, you have all the qualifications for this job. You have all the qualifications for this job. And he just wasn't willing to do something different. So I guess the point is just, you know, be open to new things. In the end, it may work out best for you, you know, and just try something different. I think that's the key thing as we go into further uncertain times for this industry. I mean, I couldn't tell you what's going to happen over the next few years in this business. I have no idea. And so, you know, just be willing to do something different and try something new.
Felix was asking, you had earlier talked about having to learn to write for TV when you kind of switched careers and do it quickly. And so he wanted to know if there's any specific things that you learned that you can share about.
You know, yeah, I actually, you know, I had been a newspaper reporter, and I was doing, for the NBA, I was writing long form features for magazines. So I went from that, like 3-page articles that I worked on for weeks to writing little bitty stories that I had to get on the same day. And I had to do multiple stories for the same day. That was actually really, really hard for me. And I mean, it was just writing. Honestly, I was a very good writer. When I left at UNT, I was a fabulous writer, very creative, a good creative writer. And honestly, TV just doesn't require all that. And so I had to learn to write succinctly, to really deliver a lot of information in a sentence. It can be done. I mean, I actually trim down a lot of stories for reporters, you know, just cut out a lot of fat and just make them shorter. And so that's what I learned about, writing for TV is just writing succinctly and just really trying to impart a lot of information in just a really short amount of time. The anchor intro, the story, and the anchor tag, that's all you've got. You know, if we toss to a reporter in the field, they've got their intro. So you've got these 1, 2, 3, 5 opportunities to get all the story in. And I'm counting my intro, the reporter intro, into a live shot, their story, and they come back out to themselves, and they come out to me. So we've got 5 little pieces in order to tell you the entire story, typically. And so you have to kind of keep those things in mind, and not be repetitious, and still try to be engaging, which we do a lot of times. We used to do before now with video. Now we are relying on words more to help tell the stories. So again, so everything is just different from what it was just a few months ago. But I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Erica wants to know, what's the most challenging part of dealing with COVID right now?
The personal, I guess, the personal part. I think what people forget is that we are here too, and we're people who are living in this country as well. We're journalists, yes, but we have family members who've been sick. we are worried about our own families being sick. We worry about ourselves getting sick, just like you. And I think that's what people forget, is that we're also here living in this time with you. And so it's hard for us to remain completely detached from some of these issues because we're also living it, which makes it better for us in a way because we're able to share with you what's happening. But I don't think the average person thinks of it that way when they see people on television, except for, I don't know, this year we had the CNN anchors who both early on were, I think there were two, there may have been more, but two who early on were sick in April, May maybe. Chris Cuomo and I'm drawing a blank on the other one, Brooke Baldwin. So you see that, people on television are also getting sick and are as vulnerable as everyone else. So the hardest part for me has just been, I've got my own stresses outside of work. And this is actually every day. I mean, Friday I had a major issue where, the president's going to the hospital and I had something personal that I was trying to deal with, but I had to try to make a decision as to what was more important for me at that time. Do I stay at work later to do this? Do I feel guilty about leaving? And, it's just all these things that we're dealing with. So the hardest part about COVID is that I'm dealing with COVID and the concerns about it as well. And I'm as afraid of it as anyone else. And I think that for me has been the most difficult part, the personal part of it. I think your question was meant to get at what's the hardest part about covering it. And honestly, to me, it's like anything else, covering it like anything else. It's just that we are not able to go places. We are not able to go interview people. We're doing more now from a distance, but we're not able to go interview people in person. We're doing all these interviews online. We are, we're all stressed out. So that's, I think, and I could probably go on and on about that, but I think it's just left us a little bit drained. And, we've actually had several people here who had to deal with COVID as well. They were sick with it and had to, recover. Everybody had a mild case, but still, we've been impacted by it as well.
All right, I think we might have time for one more question before Kristi's got to go. So I see, Gabriella, you've got your hand raised again if you want to jump in there.
Yes, hi, Gabriella again. One more question. You talk about the time crunches that you have for interviews. How difficult is it for certain stories to get an interview, and how much time do you normally have to get those?
It depends, honestly. I'll speak as a reporter, which I don't necessarily do all the time, but as a reporter out in the field, it's, you'll say we have a meeting at 9:30. And most people figure out whether or not their story, if they pitched a story, they figure out if they can do it, or if there's anything else, they're assigned it. And then if you're really organized and you pitched it, you had the people already lined up. You'd be surprised how often that does not happen in Market 5. And I've done it myself many times. But then it's a matter of, you've got to find the people. So let's say you saw something this morning, a note or something, and you want to do that story today. I mean, really, you get started calling 9, 10 in the morning, and you have to be on the air by 4 o'clock. So that means you've got to, this is actually easier. Doing these Zoom interviews is actually much easier, because before you'd have to get them and try to arrange with them to be at a place at a certain time. And because we had to do it all in person, and sometimes you had more than one interview. Most of the time you have more than one interview. So you've got to drive to Louisville and interview this guy at his office. He only has from 11:30 to 12:30. And then you've got to drive all the way back over to East Dallas and, or Fort Worth or whatever. And that actually happens all the time. And talk to another person who is only available from 1 to 2. And then you got to put those together, park, set up your live shot, and do a story for 4. When I was a reporter, we would have to do 3 live shots a day, but now they've realized it's very difficult. So they ask them to do, maybe they do the 4 and the 6, or they do the 5 and the 6, or they do just the 5 or just the 6 or something like that. It just depends. But yeah, you've got to write all of those stories. They're supposed to look different a little bit. People say that all the time, but they're supposed to look different for each show. So it's actually very hard to find people to get people to agree to do in-person interviews is hard. Get people to agree to do a Zoom interview is much easier. So we figured out that that's something that may stick around. We may ask people to do these streaming video services. We do Zoom and another one that NBC prefers because it's just easier to get people to agree. They're at home, they don't have to dress up, they don't have to meet you anywhere. And I think it'll be going forward, we may be able to do one in person, maybe get another one online, and that makes it a lot easier. But yeah, you've got a limited amount of time. It's just time management, you know, and some days it's easy, some days it isn't. Depends on the story, depends on the people you're trying to get. There's no hard and fast answer to that. It just depends.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Yes, I see a hand.
Yeah. Kanisha had her hand up if you have time for one more.
Yes, I know we have limited time, but I just wanted to introduce myself and say my name is Kanisha Hewitt. I'm a broadcast journalism major here. I wanted to see if we could share emails or something because there's several other questions that I would like to answer, but I know we do have limited time.
I don't mind. They have my work email. They can ask Brittany or Karina to send it to you. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I mean, if you have, I'm still sitting here. If you have a question, I can give you an answer.
Okay. Well, I wanted to know, like, what is the hardest part about being a Black woman in this industry? I would say
you might need to have that's a long.
Yes, see, I knew that. That's why I was like, we're gonna have to share something else so we can have more time because I wanted to ask a lot of more in-depth questions, especially during this relevance in this time. And like for me, I feel, I don't know, like during this time, I want to know, like, how do you like let go of such bias in the news, especially with Breonna Taylor's acquittal, especially with like how you feel as being a Black woman. That's what I really want to know.
You know, that is a long answer. Maybe that's a whole other session that we have, but I will try to just quickly give you an answer, but it is not easy. I will say just being a Black woman in this business is not easy. You can look at any television screen and see that. How many of us do you see doing it's not because we're not qualified and we haven't gotten all the same credentials, you know, what is it? What is the reason? You know, if you are passed over for promotions for people who are brought in from elsewhere, you know, and broadcast news is one of the few businesses that can actually get away, like professional businesses that can get away with openly using race as a factor in determining who's going to fill. And this is something that's probably changing, but race as a factor when determining who's going to fill a particular position. So let's say it's happened here. We've had like a morning show position, this was 10 or 12 years ago. And, you know, and then let's say they might decide that, and this happens all over the country, frankly, they may decide that this is a job that we need. Our focus groups say that we need this, and it'll be, we're only looking at Black men for this job, or we are only looking at Latinas. That's been a thing that's happened a lot recently. We're only looking at Latinas for this job. So no one else, so what you hear through your agent and your representatives is, oh, they're looking for a Latina for that job, you can't apply. And when you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous, but they get away with it because it's considered, that part of the business is considered casting. So, you know, whether or not somebody wants to challenge those things and take these, all these news organizations to court over that, who knows? I don't know if anyone ever has, or what the outcome has been, because those things are usually kept quiet. But you know, I don't know, but I think that it's happened a lot. You know, when I was trying to get jobs, I would hear, you know, you should try St. Louis, that's a Black market. Or you can get a job in Detroit, you know, or maybe you can get a job in Atlanta. But I would go, but I really would like to go to California or something. You know, that's like a Latina neighborhood place. Oh, that's kind of a Latina market, you know, stuff like that. So it's just kind of like, are you kidding me? And, you know, I think that those things might change, going forward after a lot of the things that have happened in the last year or so, but how will we know? I don't know, but I do think that you could just turn on your TV and see, if you've been watching over the past few years, it's gotten a little bit better, but you saw very few, not very many is what I was trying to say. You saw very few Black women leading newscasts, anchoring newscasts. I did a story recently, we were talking about how Black women are left behind in higher level positions in general. This is in all fields because for a variety of reasons, but it's not for lack of determination or education or ability. What is it? So that's just something that, I think things that are slowly being chipped away at. And it can be very discouraging. I can't lie. There have been times where I just can't do this anymore. Why don't I just go do something else? And also, and another part of your question is just how difficult it is to block out some of these things. We've got people, I know people in this business who had to take time off this year because things were just too heavy. And it's just hard to watch a lot of the racial things that are happening, being impartial, and just having to look at these images every day and listen to some of the things that people say, and a lot of the hatred. I find that people just are trolling my Facebook page, waiting for me to post any article about the protest or what. I could just post it, or I didn't write the article. I don't say anything about it. I just reposted one that appeared on a website, on NBC News or on our website, and the thinly veiled hate that would be in the comments is clearly, racial. Those types of things, and very few people have to deal with that kind of stuff. And I think I've alluded to a situation in my first job in Connecticut. One of the issues is that I came in through a diversity program that NBC had. I was the first one, actually. They had a program to fast track journalists of color into newsrooms. So that's how I was able to jump over several markets and get to NBC. And let me tell you, that did not go over well. And I was actually hazed to the point where they got back to the network. A lot of that, clearly it was racial. But what do you do? And this was a long time ago. This was 20 years ago. And so I put up with a lot of it, and it was my goal just to get out, and I did. I came here. But, just the lack of support for that program, and the company had set up this wonderful diversity program to try to increase their diversity, but they had no backup, and they had no support. So, they kind of just left me to flounder. But it's a tough situation. Again, that's a whole other thing. I could probably find 5 or 6 people who'd be willing to talk about just sort of the racial challenges. And again, it's improved a lot. I think it will improve further from this point on, from this year on. But there's still a lot of work to be done. Does that answer everyone's questions?
Yes, thank you,
so
Kristi.
much, Kristi. I know that you said 10:30, and we've already got you over. So if you want to wrap up, we totally understand deadlines. They're working all the time in their own classes. So
yes, I know, and you guys probably have more than I do. It's just an unusual day, but so yeah, I see more people are coming in. I apologize, I do have to leave. And if you ever come to Channel 5, you see here this is our green room where the guests sit until ready to go on the air, but we don't have guests now, so I use it as my personal Zoom room. So it was good to be here, and I apologize I have to run off, but I think we got a lot in.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Great, thank you guys. Thanks so much, and best of luck to you.
Thank you, Kristi.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And for those anybody else who was asking, Karina did put Kristi's email in the chat for you guys, so that you guys can see that if you want to reach out to her and continue a conversation with her. While Kristi had to go, I do want to ask if there are any other questions. While it's not quite as exciting as having Kristi, Dean Miller and I both worked in broadcast. That's both of our backgrounds as well. So if you have any other questions that Kristi didn't get to answer that you want to ask to either one of us, we're happy to continue to answer questions till 11, or if there aren't any, then we can just wrap it up a little early and y'all can get back to work on school or whatever else you guys have going on. So before we end, just if there's any other questions that you guys have, I know that most of you can ask us your questions anytime when you have us in class and that sort of thing.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you, Brittany, and thank you, Dean Miller. I'm actually at NTTV. I'm about to do a live shot here in a little bit. So thank y'all for having this event.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Good luck.
I have one question.
Yes, Felix.
Earlier she was talking about being open-minded and as far as knowing if this is for you. So I'm saying, as students, we believe we can do this or we want to do this. That is why we sign up for this. But how do you know once you get into the field, how do you know that this is actually for you?
I think that most people who end up not doing it, it's more of a time in your life or a lifestyle thing where you're deciding like, okay, because it requires you to work nights, it requires you to work weekends, it requires you to work holidays. It could require you to pick up and move, and that might be to a small market in Texas, but it also could be to somewhere across the country if that's where you happen to get a job. And so I think that answer is going to be different for everyone depending on the time in their life that they're in. I know when I first started out, I was willing to go anywhere and I was excited to work the holidays because I'd usually get to fill in an anchor and that was an opportunity. And, and then now I'm at a point in my life where, I made the decision to get out of it, even though I still loved it, because of family or different things like that. I also have good friends who have kids and are still doing it. Those of you who are in the advanced reporting class, y'all all heard from Chris Budden, who, works for ESPN and travels 4 days a week, and she's got little ones. And so I think that answer is going to be different for everyone. Most of the people that I know who have decided it's not for them, it's usually not because they're like, oh, I can't do the job. It's because they don't want to. Like if you're really dedicated, you can do this. It's just a matter of are the sacrifices for a job that I love worth the payoff? But I truly do believe that if you take it seriously, and I think we equip you with a really good, solid foundation to go off of, where you have the skills. It's not a matter of, can I do this? It's a matter of, do I want to go this route? Because when I was graduating, which was not that long ago, right? I'm not that old, you guys. It was pretty much like if you wanted to do something like this, you went and worked for a small market news station and that was it. That was the career path. You were either a reporter or you were a producer and you worked in a small market news station, and that's how you did video storytelling. Now, she was saying keep an open mind. The amazing thing about this career and the skill sets that you guys are getting are that, yes, you can still totally go and work at a small market newsroom and become a reporter or become a producer, but there are so many other things that you can do with these skills too. Whether it is going to work for a nonprofit or a company or a sports team or a university, our world with social media and all these different things, everything we do, whether it's news or branding or any of these things, revolve around storytelling, and quite frankly, revolve around visual storytelling. Photo and video and all of that is so important to so many different industries at this point that you have a lot of options. And you have a lot of options that are traditional news, but there's also a lot more online and digital publications that, are doing news and are still doing journalism, but it might not be the 5, 6, 9, 10 p.m. newscasts. It might be a digital platform. And it might be something like Newsy, which is, they're very much journalists, but they're not going around in the same way that a, you know, local reporter for one of these local stations would be. And they hire young people. You know, there's just a lot more options out there for what you might be able to do. And one of the I mean, and I know when you're in my class in particular, you know, for those of you who are in the advanced reporting class or will be soon, we train you to be, you know, we kind of train you in the sense of like you're working in a daily newsroom. But those skills translate big time in a lot of different ways.
Transferable skills. So I've been in education now for 20 years. And I would say, you know, half of my students are still in journalism, all different kinds of journalism. So some went into newspaper and now they're doing podcasts, or they started in television and now they're doing PR. And so those transferable skills that you're learning here at the Mayborn School are what going to set you up for whatever you want to do. You know, whether it is, you know, working weekends and working holidays, when you love it, when you love what you do, that's one thing about journalism. It's something new and different every day. And if that's the kind of life that you are interested in, because you like learning, you're a lifelong learner, then journalism is something that you're going to enjoy for a long time. But then, you know, as Brittany said, as those life experiences change and your situations change, you know, I was working in Dallas as a news producer. Well, it got to the point where, you know, it was probably I either needed to go network or do something else, right? And I always knew that I wanted to teach. I kind of had teaching in the back of my mind. And so that's the path, you know, that I chose. And the writing, the deadlines and all that served me in grad school, right? I mean, so again, those skills just translate across so many different things that you can do, you know, going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we have students working for school districts, for cities, for universities, for sports teams. I know that that's a big one. You know, a lot of you guys are interested in sports, and there are fewer and fewer Dale Hansons out there, right? There are fewer and fewer the sports guy on the local channel. Sports departments at local TV stations have actually shrunk over the last decade. But there are more sports jobs than there ever have been. If you go work for a conference, you go work for a team, you go work for a university. So it might look a little different than who you watched growing up when your parents had the TV on, but you're still doing, you know, storytelling and reaching out to audiences and that sort of thing.
I was gonna say, I know for me that I've gotten a lot of negativity already because I am a girl in sports broadcasting, and it's definitely like I've been told like, oh, you can't do that because you're a girl and stuff like that. So like, what are some like tips that you have for like dealing with that negativity? Because it's honestly made me rethink being a sports broadcaster sometimes.
They're jealous, they're threatened.
Yeah, well, and Chris Budden usually speaks in my advanced reporting class, and she always touches on that because she is a sideline reporter for ESPN. Who dealt with that. I know she would tell you that she feels like it's getting a lot better, that people are much more accepting and they don't just treat her like, oh, you're a pretty face on the sidelines, which when she first started out 10 to 15 years ago was kind of how she felt like people treated her. I know for her, like one of the biggest issues she runs into is like coaches. And the way they will be like, oh, well, that young lady, or, you know, like as opposed to,
you know,
who they've known for a decade, or, you know, like, but I would just say ignore it. Like, know your stuff. Like, because Chris studies twice as hard as anybody to make sure, you know, like, know your stuff. And when you know that you know your stuff, forget the rest of them. Like, forget any of the negativity, because as long as you know what you're talking about and you've studied it and you know the plays and the players and everything that there is to know, then that's all you can do. And I will say, I'm not saying it's not an issue anymore, because it is, but I do think it's an issue that has gotten better and I think will continue to get better.
Thank you.
As far as broadcasting and reporting, how difficult is it to actually become more comfortable in front of the camera and and I guess what tips would you have in terms of practicing and being able to just be more natural in front of the camera?
The more you do it, the easier it gets. And that, I know that can be hard, practice, but there are so many, like you can download an app on your phone or your iPad that does teleprompter. You can, like little things like that. You can do mock live shots, just find a news story and pretend like you're presenting the information. Like the more you do it, the more you're going to get better at it. Also, we have NTTV here, which is one of the best student-run television stations in the country. And so I say, like, get involved and get involved early. I feel like a lot of people will wait and then you'll be in my class and then you'll like be forced to do some reporting for NTTV and then they'll get involved. But for those of you who are sophomores, juniors, freshmen, get involved now. I mean, I don't know if you can really do much now because they've already filled the slots for the semester, but every semester they refill slots. And if you want to be involved in some way, like it's not hard to get involved in some form or fashion. They have, Monday through Thursday, they have a noon and a 6 p.m. show that they have anchors, they have live shot reporters. You just heard Roy, he was going to do his live shot right now. And so just go do it. Get involved, sign up, because the more reps you get, the more comfortable you're going to be, the easier it's going to get, because as she was talking about having to do it, one of the hardest things is having to do it so fast, right? And that's just part of the job, but it gets so much easier the more that you do it. And so that's one of the biggest things that I can tell you is take advantage of those opportunities that you have as a student, because not every university gives you those kinds of opportunities.
That's right. Yeah. In my undergrad, we had, a TV station, but we didn't really have the capability to go live. So that live experience is key. And even if you're not involved in NTTV, you can practice, right? You can record yourself on your phone. You can record yourself on Zoom, reading different scripts, and then watch it and see how you did. If you also do that, that's going to hone your writing, because you're going to read something and you're going to trip it up and you're going to rewrite it to make it more clear. And so that kind of practice that you can just do on a daily basis, if you can't get on the air at NTTV right away, is something that will help you in both the on-camera presence and also in the writing.
The other thing that I'll say, and Chris is also asking where we sign up, so I'll get to that in a second. The other thing that I'll say is watch the news. I'm always shocked by the number. I mean, I guess that most of you might not even have cable anymore, but you can just have it on. If this is what you want to do, you should be watching the news. And so just the more you can have it on in the background, the more you're going to hear what that sounds like. And the more you're going to just naturally have a knack for what it's supposed to be.
Right. And that's, that's what I say about you're a lifelong learner when you're a journalist, right? It's the same thing. You have to be a student of life, but you also have to be a student of news. You got to watch it. You got to consume it. All different kinds of outlets, listen to podcasts, watch TV news, watch cable, read everything online that you can, because that is going to help you, like Brittany said, get the rhythm, get the cadence, understand how, how clean and crisp, the writing are. And then before you know it, you're going to be critiquing, right? You're going to be going, you know what? They didn't quite say that the way they should have, or that didn't make sense, and again, it's going to help your skills just by being exposed to it.
So Chris was asking about NTTV. You can always reach out to them and see if they have stuff. I don't know if they would allow anybody to sign up right now in the middle of the semester because they've filled their slots. But there's always, you could always reach out to NTTV and ask. I do know that at every semester they they start over with who, assigning anchors and assigning live shot reporters and stuff like that. And so what I would say is the first couple of weeks of the semester, which is, I think it's usually the second week, is when they do what's called NTTV kickoff. Follow NTTV on social media. They always put it up there, or go to the website, Google NTTV, that sort of thing. They always put the information up. Usually it's in person. This semester it was virtual. I would assume next semester it will be virtual still. But you just go to they have a couple of different times that they do kickoff, and you go to one of the meetings, and then you sign up for an audition time and you audition. And, the people who are the best, get to anchor the 5, and then the next ones get to anchor the noon. They also have live shot reporters. So they'll slot you in somewhere. They have what they call segment anchors, where you are, not necessarily anchoring the whole newscast, but you might anchor one small part of it and do a couple of stories there. And then you just keep working your way up. So, you might try out, and maybe you get a segment anchor for a semester, and then you try out again, and the next semester you get slotted on one of the noon shows. And then you try out again, and the next semester maybe you get the 5 p.m. newscast. So, and it's the same thing there as it is in like the industry, right? Like the more you do it, the better you're gonna get, and you'll work your way up that way. But yeah, so you'll just keep an eye out at the beginning of next semester for kickoff information, and then you'll attend there, and that's where you'll sign up to, try out for one of these spots. And even if you don't get an anchor spot, like just being there, like run cameras or run, because especially if you're a freshman or something, like you might not get to anchor the first time you try out, but if you show up and you show your interest and you show your dedication, that goes a long way.
One more question, I'm sorry. As far as like getting involved, like you're saying, I guess the most difficult thing for me is since all my classes were put online, I did decide to stay in my hometown. So I guess the most difficult thing for me is like trying to get involved virtually, but I guess I haven't been able to find a lot of opportunities like that. And I know with those kind of practices, those are normally people want to.
No, that's tough, and that's a very real issue right now. What I would say is you might be able to do packages for them. You're not going to be able to anchor remotely or do a live shot from Houston or San Antonio or, wherever you are. Usually they do it. So if you're within driving distance, if you're an hour away or something, usually they'll do it where it's like every Tuesday. So you might be able to work it out where you drive up on Tuesdays. If not, you can see what opportunities there are to do some reporting. Because like Kristi was saying, we're doing more and more reporting where you're at home, you're doing interviews on Zoom, you're doing, so there might be opportunities to report. I don't think there would really be much in terms of the anchoring, but reporting skills are honestly more important than anchoring skills. Like nobody, especially in your first job, nobody's hiring you just because you can read a teleprompter well. They want a solid reporter, right? Like they want to know that your reporting skills are solid, because if your reporting skills aren't solid, there are a lot of people who can read a teleprompter.
Right.
Like that's actually, it's hard at first because there's the nerves aspect, but that's the easy part. Once you get over the nerves, and like being a solid journalist is more important than being good at reading the teleprompter. So there, like, there might still be opportunities to do some reporting or, to turn a package every other week or something like that for them. The other thing is like we were saying before, like you can still practice. You can still like go out and like look at the newspaper and say like, okay, if I were reporting on this story and I were going to be out doing a live shot, what would I do? And just record yourself. And practice getting the information written really nice and succinctly and to where it's really conversational and easy for the audience to understand, because just the performance aspect of going live is one small part of that. How you present the information, how you write it. If you're writing a script, you could have the best anchor in the world, and if the script is terrible, it's not going to sound great.
Yeah.
So those writing skills are even more important than like your on-camera presence.
Yeah, this is my first year at North Texas.
Anywhere.
Right. Well, this is my first year at North Texas. I am a transfer student. I am a sophomore. So being able to, like, unfortunately be home is difficult. But so far, I have been enjoying online as much as I can. But I guess also another question I have is, my advisor did explain to me that internships are required for y'all's program. So how do y'all go about advising students to get into those internships?
So I'm the internship advisor for broadcast, and usually you can't do your internship credit until you've been through at least a certain amount of classes.
Yeah.
So we do talk about that a lot. Like in the advanced reporting class, we have a whole week or two dedicated to resumes and resume reels, which are like video resumes basically, toward the end of the semester. So having a solid reel is really important. But you're not going to have that right now.
For sure, yeah.
But you will build that. And, you know, like you can build that through work at NTTV, but you'll have the opportunity to build everything you need for that just through your classes too. And so as you go through more and more of your classes, you'll do more and more work that will tell you, save this because you'll need this for a resume reel later on. And so you'll build those skills as you go through the classes, and you'll have those opportunities to have those examples of your work that you can show, because really the reel is going to be the most important thing when you're looking for internships and jobs, is having work that you've done that you can show.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a portfolio type.
It's very similar, yeah.
Okay.
Really quickly, I want to give Trent and Teresa, they're part of organizing these events, and they're part of the education committee for the Mayborn School of Journalism's board. And so I just wanted to give them a really quick chance to jump in as we're finishing up to tell you a little bit about what they do and if they want to add anything.
Thank you very much, Brittany, and thank you, Andrea, for having us on this call. This was very interesting because I started out as a broadcast journalist and switched very quickly to become a print journalist, which, by the way, Andrea, you can take those skills and transfer them well outside the field of journalism. So thank you guys for being part of this today. I do want to also encourage you. There are a couple of other mentoring situations, and you don't necessarily have to be in that particular discipline to join us. They're throughout the month of October, scheduled at different times so that you can participate, and different days. So we wanted to make sure everybody got that opportunity. The other thing that I will tell you is that UNT has a mentoring program. And if you find yourself in a place where you actually need someone to talk to, there is an organization through the student union that actually are the active, what is it, Karina? It's through the student
Career Center.
Thank you, through the Career Center, that has a mentoring capability. And I think it's wonderful because I've had several conversations with students at North Texas who were interested in, how do I do my resume? How do I balance my life? All kinds of questions that come up. And there are lots of people that are willing to help you with those. So just remember that. And thank you, Andrea and Brittany, again. It was a pleasure to be part of this.
All right, I think that's about it. I'll stay on until everybody's off, just in case somebody else has something they want to talk about or ask. But thank you guys. I wish we could have had Kristi a little bit longer, but I think we got most of the questions in for her, and she's a UNT alum. Like, she sat exactly where you are, right? And she's in one of the biggest markets in the country. So hopefully, it's always good to hear from somebody who's been there and done it. But I think it's particularly special to hear someone who kind of comes from exactly where you were. So thanks you guys for coming and listening and having some great questions for her as well.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being the moderator, Brittany. This was fabulous.
No, I think these are great.